Peace, peace. Welcome everyone to another segment of foundational back up, reverse. Another segment of Thunderground Thursday on enlightenment and transformation. I am Yuya, also known as Chief Yuya, and I want to let you all know that it is truly an honor for me to come to you this evening and to build with you and to speak with you and to just vibe with the enlightenment and transformation family of listeners and the enlightenment and transformation newcomers, all of you who are new to this experience and all of you who are who've been listening. It's always an honor because in a very small way, we are creating our own communal structure, and it has to start somewhere. Many of you now, at least, are aware of how things come into being from that Okan realm, but coming from thought to word to physical manifestation. So, things move in their own realms, in their own times, and us being able to do these segments or experience these segments together and using these as a platform and as a launching pad for something more tangible is an awesome thing. So, of course, I'm always thankful. So, every time I always say I'm thankful and it's for multiple reasons, just so you know, it's not always the same thing. It's not always, thank you for listening, even though I say that. But sometimes something may have happened throughout the strong with the listener or with the student or with the client that reminds me of why I am thankful and why I am appreciative of this experience and of these moments that we get to build and vibe together. And certainly and definitely for all the feedback that we're able to receive. And, as I promised, coming into the Roman New Year of 2016, at least the financial New Year, which I always acknowledge it as that. I don't necessarily acknowledge it as a new anything other than a new year for finances based on the stronger society financial structure and schedule. And we got to be aware of that stuff. And a lot of times we're dead set on our rebellion and not being a part of certain structures and being as invisible as we possibly can and as detached as we possibly can. But, at the same time, it is a wise thing to know how systems work and systems operate and how to function within them and how to function without them. So I'm always thankful, like I said, of being able to have different calendars. And knowing what stuff is for us, what stuff is for them, what stuff is for them. So, over there, this is theirs, this is theirs, this is theirs, and having your own. And that's it's kind of the basis of what I wanted to talk about this evening in terms of having your own, or more so of having your own standard, so we could say it's standard. We'll say that. As you've probably noticed, the shows are typically titled after the broadcast of the shows. And the reason being is because when I started doing the live call-in shows a few months back on Thursdays and Fridays, I found myself not always getting through the fullness of whatever topic it was that I wanted to address because callers were calling. And though I stopped taking callers on Thursdays and Fridays, I've kind of still gotten into that groove of, just seeing what the flow has to say afterwards, So most of the time you just see a date on the show and then like maybe half an hour after the show, you'll see a title because usually whatever point or idea resonated with me the most, that's the one that I will say, okay, well, maybe this will be the title, So I'm saying standards now, but right before I started the show and I was just kind of meditating and vibing out, listening to some music and thinking about what I wanted to share with everyone. that's kind of what kept coming to me, or at least an image kept coming to me, and I had to figure out what the word was that I was supposed to be sharing. So I realized it was standards. And, I want to give everyone a heads up again, because I noticed like our YouTube listenership is way lower than our blog talk listenership. I mean, like maybe less than a tenth of people have transitioned to YouTube. And I think, well, I already know because some people have said it, is because some people don't know that we've moved the Monday through Friday shows over to YouTube. So they're calling into Blog Talk thinking Thunderground Thursdays, Foundational Fridays, North South for Masterminds Mondays is broadcasting on Blog Talk. But I shifted those shows away from the Blog Talk radio platform, and I was actually going to shift everything. I was just going to completely come off of Blog Talk, but I had a conversation with Yusuf L. As you know, we on Sundays we broadcast on high frequency radio, as well as Enlightenment and Transformation, our live call-in show of Chief Speaks, and he was really adamant, about asking and hoping that I stayed on Blog Talk to keep doing the show on Sundays. So I said, okay, so I'll keep the Blog Talk account, at least for the Sundays. So that's why we still broadcast on Sundays on Blog Talk, but everything else it's on YouTube through Monday and Fridays, because it's a bit more convenient for us, and we don't have as many technical glitches, like all of the different tricky stuff that we do, flying in phone calls and flying in music and audio files, and sometimes even video files and commercials and stuff like that. We can, freak the system a little bit more coming straight to YouTube. So, yeah, like I said, so I wanted to just give everyone a reminder about that in terms of where the shows are positioned, and, where they're broadcasting from, because I know some people were a little confused on that, and they thought that we actually stopped doing the shows. We didn't. So if you talk to anyone, just let them know that no, we didn't stop doing the shows. The shows have been coming just as regularly. We just moved them, and we did announce it a lot. But But anyway, and I spoke on that Sunday, so I don't want to get into it again and then seem like I'm just being a mean ogre. All right, let's see something. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to build on something that I've been doing this series surrounding just different things that we need to do to launch. And Thunderground Thursdays is always about the launch, but sometimes you need a pre-launch before the launch, and you need to do a pre-launch check. You do a systems check. Once the systems check clears, then you're able to go. You're able to move forward. So I really wanted to, coming down to the close of the financial year for 2015, I really wanted to do some systems checks and really discuss some of the things that maybe make it a bit difficult and a bit thorny in our ascensions towards what it is that we want to do. Trying to get to where we're going, or trying to launch, or trying to make something happen for ourselves. So I covered a couple of things like devotion and stamina and loyalty and regeneration, just different points and ideas that sometimes trip us up when we're trying to take that first step. Even Sunday, we discussed initiation. Well, as Sister Kim pointed out Sunday, I discussed initiation, and the callers discussed what they wanted to discuss. But it's it's all good. But yeah, so really still focusing on that, because I'm really, what this is really about too. I'm really willing. I don't want to say hoping, but I'm willing that in 2016, some of the things that you guys have been saying that you are born to do and want to do and are so anxious about doing, that you actually get it done, that you actually do it, and for some of you, that you stop making excuses about it. I'm really willing that we can get to that space where you can stop making excuses and really, whatever it is that you feel that you don't know, to launch and to get started. I'm trying to lay some of those things, some of the common things, of course, in my work, because I work with a lot of different people. So what's good about that is that I always have a pretty big selection in terms of like my focus group of people to poll, ask little questions of, or just to observe and say, okay, a lot of people coming with this issue, a lot of people coming with that issue. So that opportunity opens up for me to like really see, well, what's holding everybody up. In this information age, we have a profundity of information. It's funny, the other day I was watching a documentary with someone, and excuse me, just getting some of my tea. And in this documentary, this individual was reading this book, and the book was it was like kind of tattered and torn, and the the print was pretty faded, and you just had little pictures here, and it was a book dealing with just some of the some African history. And there was you could tell this person, like, this is the house book. In this particular documentary, they may have had 3 or 4 books in their house, and this, so they were very precious things to have. And I commented to the person, I said, I remember a time when it was like that. I remember when you would get a book, one book, and it could be 100-page book, and that book would spark conversation for over a year. Because you would read each point, and then you would go back and you would talk to like your circle about it, and you read some more, and everybody would come up with different points, and you just keep going and going and going and going and going until it's time for another book. It was a time even music was like that, right? You get a music project, you listen to it the entire year until the next one comes out. And I said it's interesting because now we're in a society where you can go online quickly, Scribed or wherever, download 30 books within 5 minutes. Old books, like all these old books and stuff that were hard to get that people have scanned in, and I bet you won't read any of them. You may thumb through a few of them on your phone or on your tablet, but you won't really read them. So and it's not a condemnation or indictment in that level towards society. It's just things have changed a little bit. So sometimes you have to sit back and say, well, wow, we have the books now. We have the videos now. We got information, and everybody's a teacher. So we do not have a shortage of teachers at this point. What's the holdup? And then when you ask a question like that, or you look into it, then you have to really look at, well, something's holding things up. So that's why I say, towards the end of the year, I want to really talk about some of the holdups that come across my mat or my table, my desk consistently. What are the things that are constantly holding people up? So that's what all this has been about, just so you all know, in terms of the topics that we have been doing. That's what it's particularly about. All right. What I'm gonna do real quick to get myself in the right headspace, because you guys know I run around a lot, not just running around for the sake of running around. So you got people who do that just to, I'm so busy. But sometimes before the shows begin, I have to do things to kind of get me into a space so I can flow like I like to flow, because it's all about the flow. At least for me, being able to flow makes things easier. It makes things a lot easier. It makes the planning make more sense. All right, so I'm gonna give a audio libation to the ethers really quick, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about tonight's topic.
What would I do without you? What would I do without you? What would I do without you? Calibrate. I can feel what's real. I can trust again. I accept the truth. I don't have to pretend. I don't need your handout, 'cause I'm a man. I'll take the little I got and do the best I can. Tell me what would I do without you? 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 Said I have no feeling, why you men are still all the time, man. Tell me, baby. Say I have no heart and I don't understand. Systems malfunction. Pain and I'm loving you. Brains and I'm covering you. Blame, I'm responsible. Aimed and I'm trusting you. Even when we can't get along with each other. I ain't really do nothing wrong, but just love you. I ain't really do nothing wrong. Tell me what would I do without you? Tell me what would I do without you? Tell me what would I do without you? I can cry, I can frown, I can laugh, I can smile. Just could drive out of town and just chill for a while. I can cry, I can frown, I can laugh, I can smile. Just could drive out of town and just chill for a while.
All right, so I'm back with more Thunderground Thursday on enlightenment and transformation. And like I said before we left, that just kind of wanted to set a tone. You know, that helps me a lot when I'm doing these segments, to kind of set a tone. And, you know, always understand too, you know, not necessarily trying to speak from a place, because, you know, we got a lot of speakers nowadays. People like to talk a lot, but not necessarily speaking from a place when I'm doing any of these segments as if I'm so far beyond humanity or human realisms that I have all of the answers at this point. As I've said many times, I don't have all the answers. Just for a lot of people, I'm just a little further down the road. But it's the same road. If you look out your window, depending on where you live, and you look on the corner, and you may see a group of men out on a corner making a lot of noise, or, you know, doing something less than righteous, or just doing something that maybe might even make you be ashamed to be a part of their group, I will tell you that the person that you're listening to right now in this segment has the same issues as those men on the corner. Same issues, you know. The only difference is that I react and respond to the symptoms of those issues a little differently, or I may be able to articulate the full ensnarement of those issues a little differently than some others. But there's no Superman cape here. All right. So I say that as an intro to also say, you know, in this segment, we're talking about banners and standards. And, you know, the song I just played, of course, as you know, all the songs are my music that I've been working on. And I'm saying that to say, too, that talking about getting off the launching block or starting at getting something accomplished or getting to that next space, a lot of these songs that you've been hearing me play, well, pretty much all of them are indicative of that own state within me. You know, just projects that never finished, stuff that is sitting, ideas, concepts. That particular one, believe it or not, came from the movie The Wiz. And there's a scene in the movie where Nipsey Russell, he plays a Tin Man, and he is singing "What Would I Do If I Could Feel." It's a song I thought was one of the coolest sounding songs. I mean, Quincy Jones just did a masterful job with that soundtrack, but that song was in the key of A minor, and it just had like the coolest bass line. Doom, 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 doom. You know, it was just real cool sounding. But you know, he's saying, what would I do? What would I do if I could feel? I would do this, I would do this, I would do that, I would do that. You know, so that's where that song came from. But so, you know, the things that I'm saying to you, always understand that my ears are closer to my mouth than yours are. So whatever I'm saying to you, I'm absorbing and taking in, and listening to my own guidance as well, and checking and reflecting and looking within my own cipher and in my own journey to see where maybe I've fallen short of some of the values and the standard that I am sharing with you. So I wanted to get into this idea of standards a little bit, right? And a lot of times when we talk about standards, sometimes we talk about standards from like a relationship perspective. We say, you know, well, I wouldn't date someone like that. I have higher standards than that. Or I have standards. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. And the standard certainly can be used as a measurement for a bar that we have set the expectations in certain areas for ourselves at, and we won't dip beneath that bar, that measurement of that expectation. That certainly is one way to look at a standard. But, you know, going into a space where, again, these segments, these end of the financial year segments have been about getting to a space where we can conquer some of the situations and some of the pathologies that have kept us from going from point A to point B or point C, right? So coming into that space, every word that I'm using is related to that struggle, you know, that progression that we're trying to make. And we all have something, you know, we all have, like when I spoke about the ships that need to be sank, you know, we all have ships that need to be sank in our lives. And in fact, there was a show that I did, I think in 2014, that was entitled Planning for Victory. And I spoke about some of the processes of planning and some of the things that we need to keep in mind as we're planning. And I believe I gave a ritual as well in that show. Could have been another show, though, but I'm pretty sure it was that one because I remember the word victory in it. So I bring that up to say that the idea of a standard is typically related to warfare, believe it or not. It's typically related to the visualization or the actualization of a victory, but more so the visualization. And then, it doesn't have to be the manifestation of a victory yet, but at least the visualization of such. And then when it's actualized, it makes the standard even stronger. It sends out a different type of message on the other side of it. When we use the term standards, and we're typically talking about, again, what we will accept in our lives or what we will not accept in our lives, that's applicable in one sense, because, again, if we've overcame certain situations in our lives and we have victory in our lives, then there are certain things that we no longer have to go back to, which is one of the reasons why, like when I do the Tefa readings for people, I don't just speak about what you're here to do now. I also speak about what you already did, what you accomplished in your past life. What were some of your hangups in your past lives? What were some of the things that you accomplished that you don't need to deal with anymore? Because that helps you to understand, for one, the reverberation that you may have created eons ago, that maybe reverberates and resonates throughout your different life journeys, your different incarnations. But just because that reverberation is present, it doesn't mean that you have to make that a part of your personal and integrated experience every time. It may just be the reverberating echoes that are around you, so you may have accomplished. A lot of times you'll see this, and some people have experienced this in readings with me. They'll say, in this life, like, I never get any help. No one helps me out. I'm always on my own. Every time I want to do something, everybody will throw their fist in the air and say, yeah, I got you. But when it comes time to do it, everybody disappears. Right. And obviously, I'm sure when I said that, a lot of people say, yep, because that's a common thing within not only the cultural community, but within the spiritual community as well. And one of the reasons for it is because of what I spoke about Sunday, initiation, because a lot of the times the things that you want to do or the things that you want to see manifested are a quiet part of your mission. They're a personal part of your mission. So you'll have a lot of help from the spiritual world, but you won't have much help from the bodily world. So sometimes that's the case because in your previous incarnation, you had a lot of help. And you didn't learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You didn't learn to do things for yourself, or you didn't appreciate the amount of assistance and help that you had around you. So now in this incarnation, you're going to learn that science. You got to learn that lesson. It's like you got to learn each side of the coin. So sometimes it comes through that way. That's why it's always important to know what was behind us, what we accomplished already, so we're not repeating our work. We don't have to do things in every single lifetime. If we, some things will be reoccurring, of course, but some things you don't need to repeat. So talking about standards, which is what we're really building on in this show, Thunderground Thursday. Let me repeat for those who just came in after our little audio break. Thunderground Thursdays on enlightenment transformation. I'm Chief Yuya speaking. But one of the things that we want to be sensitive to is the fact that typically when you're talking about a standard, you're talking about something that you've already overcome. Okay. So sometimes people will use that. They'll say, like, I'm not going to lower myself to doing that. I've worked too hard in my life to go there with you. Right. It's like a common statement. Because they know they've overcome certain things. They've worked to get to a certain place where now they're not going to lower their standard and live the life as someone who's been defeated when they don't need to. It doesn't make sense. I was speaking about that recently with someone and talking about how a lot of times you see young children who live in the suburbs attempt to dirty themselves up. Because there's now this fascination and this sissified glorification of all things thuggish. So because of that, you have young children who will live in beautiful places that their parents worked very hard to place them into. Maybe they came out of those very rough and rugged environments and brackish waters, if you will, and they put their children into a better environment. And the first thing that the children will do is they'll try to dirty it up. I think I spoke about this Sunday, matter of fact, when I saw some children playing CeeLo or craps, dice, on a suburban street once against the sidewalk. It was a very hilarious scene, but it was also sad at the same time. So sometimes it's the same thing in our own life journey. We would have accomplished something or made it through something, but we want to go back again to dirty ourselves up. And that's because we're not being respectful and gracious in the presence of the standard that has been created, or the standard that has been produced and manifested through our work. So if we're not sensitive to that standard, then we'll go back and dirty ourselves up. So that's just a small example of it, right? But how does it relate to warfare, right? Because typically a standard was always spoken about in direct relationship to a banner. So a standard and a banner went hand in hand. Okay, and the standard and the banner had its own story to it, just like you have in the Haitian tradition, and you have a very prominent use of flags, and not necessarily just in voodoo, but flags are just used a lot. And obviously you're dealing with a group of people who are very proud about their victory, very proud about what they've overcome despite where they're still at. And the original doctrine and the original standards and the original banner that they created in order to actualize victory is still something that they're very proud of. Okay, so a standard was typically a flag that was used to say, we came, we saw, we conquered. Okay, that was so just like you see those images of the moon landing and stuff, and they come and they pull out the American flag and they plant it on the moon. And what that represents is that, see, the thing is, and there's a very spiritual meaning to that. The higher your flag is, the more that flag or that standard controls the paradigms that exist underneath it. So what you would a lot of times have in a battle, right? You would have you'd have your flag bearer, and the flag bearer would go out and plant the flag near the battlefield, but usually at a hill, somewhere high, right? They would plant that flag, and then what would happen as the battle would go on, that flag would be the rallying point. That's where they would meet. That's where they would get their orders or whatever they needed to do, because that held the standard of victory for what it is that they expected to happen. And if they were defeated in that battle, a totally acceptable rule of war was to knock that flag over and replace it with the victor's flag. Okay, so that flag was called the standard, and in fact, it comes from a Germanic word, and it's actually it's a combination of words. It's a theory on it, and I think it's an accurate theory based on, if you know the historical context of the actual word. It came from stand hard. So stand hard, because in the Germanic it's stand hard. We say standard, but it's stand hard. So stand hard means, like, once you plant this flag, we put it on a pole, a strong pole, so it won't break. It stands, and it stands hard. And this is the standard that we hold to, and we don't break and we don't bend from it. You see, so your standards become what you stand hard on, the principles that you stand hard on. And as I spoke to you about before, you always want to make, well, for a deeper understanding or understanding, you want to make principles and keys, you want to make them synonymous with one another. So like if we say, I give you the keys to wealth, look at that as, I give you the principles to wealth. Okay, so the principles that you stand on are your standard, represented by your flag. And that identifies to all who are underneath that flag what the standard and the mores and the norms are for that particular group. Okay, so one of the challenges that I see a lot of times, sometimes I look at other organizations and I say, wow, despite maybe individuals' theories and thoughts about the type of information that some of these organizations may teach, they're steadily growing, they're steadily building. And part of the reason for that is because their standard is easily recognizable. You go certain places, let's say you see a cross, and the cross is at the highest place on the church, right? The steeple. So it's very clear that this is the standard for this particular environment here. They come under this cross, And look how high it is. It's probably higher than the American flag, if they have a flag in front of the church, any other type of flag they may put. But they make that the higher standard. So everything must fall beneath that. Okay? And it's an important thing a lot of times, because when we're trying to launch into action and we're trying to move into a new space in our lives, sometimes we have overhanging paradigms and standards that have been, and flags that have been placed on the top of our heads that, of course, we can't see. That's the amazing aspect of the crown. The crown represents the part of you that is unseen, that's invisible, because you can never see the top of you. I mean, obviously you look in the mirror, but you can't see the top of your head per se. So the standard represents what lies on top of that crown. What are the principles, the norms, the mores, the doctrines, the ideas that rest and that trickle down and shower down into every other thing that you do. And sometimes that standard is the thing that's keeping you from being able to go to the next place. You see, the standard is supposed to be your acknowledgement of victory. That's what the standard is. So like when you start to fight and you plant your flag, you look at that flag and you're reminded that, this is our standard. That's why children, when they say the Pledge of Allegiance, they don't pledge their allegiance to the country, because that doesn't really matter that much. They don't pledge their allegiance to God, because that's just too loose. They pledge allegiance to the flag. You see, because the flag becomes the standard. And I guarantee you right now, any of you listening can, especially if you grew up in the West, you can run down that pledge. I know you can. Pledge to the flag, United States, for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, something by God, with liberty and justice for all, something like that. I never said the pledge in school, but I remember hearing it. So just from my even hearing it, I got that much at least. I remember when I was in school, there was a young Jewish girl, Heather Socio, and Heather didn't have to say the pledge. And I saw her one day and I said, why don't you say the pledge? This was like the first day of school. And she said, oh, because I'm Jewish. And I said, And I was what I was at that time. I'm not going to share that with you. So I said, well, I think my religion is the best, so I shouldn't have to say the pledge either. So from that moment forward, whenever they would say pledge, no, I don't say the pledge. It's against my religion. So I didn't actually grow up saying the Pledge of Allegiance, but I remember hearing it. But you're pledging allegiance to the flag. Why? Because the flag represents your standard. Now, of course, we can get into the metaphysical value, and we can get into, well, that's not really an American flag. That's an admiral flag. It has the yellow fringes on it, so therefore it's been defaced, and it's a treasonous act to deface an American flag. So that means that's really a Moroccan flag. Yeah, right. But the point I'm saying is that there's a standard that's associated with that flag itself, and the individuals who architect the society, they understand how the metaphysics of standards work. They understand the value of a flag, what a flag actually represents. The flag, as it was called in Christian law, you had the name Jehovah Nissi. And Jehovah Nissi meant Yahweh Nissi. And Yahweh or Jehovah Nissi was my banner or my standard. And that was a name that was given when it was a battle at, I think it was, I never pronounced the name right, Rebedith, something like that. And they fought the Amalekites, and they won. And they said, okay, well, that's because we recognize that before we even went into battle, that our standard was Jehovah Nissi, meaning, this is the standard of truth that I put before all. So even when someone comes against you with information, right, you look towards your standard. You say, okay, well, what does my standard of victory say? And that's what you begin to judge all of your experiences by. When people come against you and try to distort and beguile and sway you from your path, or beguile and ensnare you into something that is harmful or injurious to you or injurious to your journey, what you do is you look to that standard. What is your flag that you're waving? Now, for some, it's the RBG, it's the red, black, and green flag. For others, it's I don't know. Everybody has their own different. For some, it's the American flag. For some, it's the Nation of Islam's flag. For some, it's the Nation of Gods and Earth's flag. There's a lot of different flags, but the flag itself represents your standard, what you stand hard on. And if you do not have standards, then anything that you move towards doing is going to feed into the standard that has been placed and given to you. And for many of you, believe it or not, that standard is still the American social system. So you have to take a look up there. And when I say up there, I'm talking about above your head, on top of your head, the place that you don't feel like looking, and see what's the actual standard that's operative there. I had a friend, I remember, we weren't really friends. Let me not say friend. A guy I used to know many years ago, and he was Korean. I met him when he basically just came off the boat, and he didn't know any English. The only English he knew was profanity, and he used to use all his profanity. I asked him, I was like, yo, how did you learn English? And he told me one day, he was like, I would just listen to people, and we were in an environment where he shouldn't have been speaking like that. He just started using all of these, really harsh, profane words. And he was like, I didn't know that those were not good words. And when I first came to this country, that's the only words that I really, those are the words that stuck out. Those were the loudest words I heard people say all the time. So I thought that was a part of regular English, So I asked him, I said, well, when you think, what language do you think in? Do you, think in Korean, or do you think in English? And he said, I used to think in Korean. When I came here, I would be able to speak English. I would think in Korean, but now the longer I've been here, sometimes it's either one, depending on the environment I'm in. Like, if I'm around a lot of my family, I find that I think more in Korean. But then if I'm not around them, I think in English. So you see that his standard is beginning to change, even down to a mental level. It's infused itself into his psyche. So even you, what language do you think in? When you dream, what language do you dream in? The symbols that come to you, what are they typically representative of? What standard are you following in that sense? Your standard, again, being your guiding and overhanging and overarching principles that guide every action that you do. What do you stand hard on? What is your flag? These are the critical questions, because when you're moving forward into trying to actually get something done, you got to see, well, what mountaintop, what hill, and not only am I working towards, but what hill and what mountaintop am I getting my orders from? Am I working or fighting against something just out of a sense of retaliation? Or am I actually fighting for someone or something? And your standard will inform you of that. A lot of you who have standards and flags that are planted on top of you that are foreign and alien to your own cultural silic and your own cultural investment, most of the work that you end up doing, even in terms of your spiritual activism, is just in response to what has happened that you don't feel good about. And ultimately, you're still hoping that the bearers and holders of that standard or that flag will finally alleviate your suffering, will finally give you something that you're asking for. But when you knock that flag down, meaning you have to defeat that system within you, have to defeat that standard with you, and you plant your own flag, you don't look for anything from them. You understand that your journey and your work is you're accountable to get up to that hill and place your hand on that flag yourself. You see? And that becomes really important. That becomes really important when we start talking about unity, when you start throwing around words like unity, when we start throwing words around like loyalty and devotion, and all of the different things that I've spoken about through this whole series of really the gut checks that we have to do in order to launch into the next space. What are those gut checks? You see, we have to look at the standard that everyone is holding first. What is the standard? What are we all getting our orders from the same place? Because if not, then our cultural, spiritual, and human and mental standard will be something different. And I'm going to speak about what happens when that occurs in a moment. I'm going to give myself another audio libation to get myself into another space. And I'll be right back. I'm going to share more on Standard.
Hey baby, don't be so touchy. Hey baby, I know they said it's ugly. Hey baby, ain't we just a little winded-headed? Hey baby, this is mental recovery. I think you're dark and lovely. You're dark and lovely. You're dark and lovely. You're dark and lovely. You're happy, no lot to relax. You're the most beautiful thing in this world. And you're before and you're after. Picture this, let's take a trip to the mother continent. You know Africa, neutralize these lies that we learn in pasture. Lovely. You're dark and lovely. You're dark and lovely. Hey, can you forgive my stare? And for being so forward, you're in this world, and I had to let you know it. Girl, you're so debonair. I hope that you're listening to the metaphors in this song. Gotta rinse that deep conditioning. You're dark and lovely, baby. Baby, you're dark and lovely. Let you know you're dark and lovely, dark and lovely. Lovely, babe. Don't change your original.
All right. So we're back with more Thunderground Thursday on enlightenment and transformation. Of course, this is Chief Yuya speaking, and we've been building on the idea of standards, right? And the standards that we use to kind of hold our mission in place to make sure that we're not veering too far from our original trajectory that we visualize. And as you understand now that your flag and your standard can be placed while you're still in the midst of battle. In fact, that's really when it is supposed to be placed. So one of the things that I said right before I took that little moment to regroup was that one of the challenges that we have sometimes in that is that when we try to get a lot of individuals together, because unfortunately sometimes we still have these dreams and delusions of all-inclusiveness when we speak about community work, you know, but when we try to get these large groups together, we always find that at the critical moments and critical points there's this divergence of thought, divergence of opinion and direction. And a lot of times it's because individuals are operating under different flags and may not even be aware of it. So I had spoke about that on the show once, some time ago, and spoke about the conscious community versus the African liberation movement, and shared that really the conscious community was something that was introduced to dismantle and discharge the African liberation movement. Because with the conscious community now, as long as you say I'm conscious, or you look conscious, you dress conscious, you smell conscious, you sound conscious, you're in. And your reasoning for doing what you are doing may be completely different than someone who's actually trying to reverse the ills and the mechanisms of systematic oppression and racism, which is how all of this stuff really got started in terms of this journey and exploration. So not planting your flag firmly and making it known. I know a lot of times, especially those of us who are into deeper information, we still have this inherent fear that someone will find out that we're not into the standard Western spiritual and mental diet. And once that happens, somehow they're going to take us away somewhere. So, like in terms of we still hide our spirituality. I don't want anybody to know this is my shrines or anything. And I'll use these generic terms like the creator and the most high and higher power and things like that. And it's again, like I said before, it's that trauma from the Inquisition. We still feel it in our blood, where we were persecuted, or many were persecuted, for having thought systems and spiritual systems outside of the legislated norm. So when you're working with these different multitude of flags, what happens is there's still got to be an overarching flag. So even though you may have a bunch of different nations, right? If they all say, well, we're Christian nations, we all have different flags, then the highest flag will be the cross. So there'll be able to be some type of congruency, some type of collective imperative and thought and mission. Okay, but when you don't have at least that highest point of congruency, and your flag is not prominent and clearly displayed, then it's very difficult for you to keep to your standards and norms. That's how you have family members who go astray so easily. One of the reasons why in the book Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, I mentioned that it's valuable to have a family mission statement that is posted somewhere near a door that people have to enter and exit every day. Because in many senses, that family mission statement represents a flag, except it's just not, flag is that mission statement in symbol form. But if you don't have the creativity or the wherewithal to create a family crest or a family flag, then certainly a mission statement is an excellent thing to remind everyone that this is the banner that we fall under. This is what we are. This is what we do. This is how we navigate and move through the world. It's an important thing. So, the planting of the flag or the knocking down of the old flag becomes a critical thing when we're trying to get together and join together and make something happen. And I played the song I just did, which is another one I gotta finish up, Dark and Lovely, really just dealing with the conditioning of the mind, and you can use products to condition thought patterns and brain waves, and sometimes that comes through the processing of our hair, but then there's also a processing that takes place of the mind. And sometimes we think we liberate ourselves from that processing because we begin to explore the vestiges and the crevices of alternative thought and cultural, meandering cultural exploration. And it becomes very interesting and exciting for us. And we find great thrill and pleasure in it. And because of that thrill and pleasure in it, we feel like now we've arrived at a better cultural paradigm. But, understand that you have many reports of people who have killed other people, and they find that one of the things that's always consistent with certain types is that they are sexually aroused while they're committing murderous acts. So there are many different areas and places that one can find thrill and joy in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they found the alignment and the congruency with their actual banner, their actual standard for their life. And without that standard, it's so easy to get knocked around into other situations that you don't want to be in, or situations that don't speak to your purpose, or people who don't speak to your purpose. And if they're not speaking and building towards that standard, that flag, that purpose, that objective, why are they there? You think about that. Look in your house. Do you have things in your home right now that do not work towards your purpose? They don't belong there. I've had storefront businesses before, and I was a stickler for that. I used to tell people, like, if there's something in, like when I had my first barbershop, it was very big space. But if there were things in that front area, the sitting area, that did not make me money, I got rid of it. I only wanted things in the shop that made money. So as I always tell my youth, and as I used to tell my barbers, we only got two things we can do with our money. We can invest it or we can save it. That's it. There's nothing else you can do with money that makes sense, that a sane person would do. So you look around and say, well, do I have investments here towards my objective or goal, or do I have obstacles? And if it's not something that's building towards that, it's got to go. It's got to give it to someone else, throw it in the garbage, go out to the woods and burn it, bury it, whatever it is that you need to do. But these things have to work towards your standard. They have to work towards your banner. You understand? And again, it's key that your standard is known, that is prominent. We got to stop hiding that so much. Sometimes we get into this real sneaky, secretive thing, and we become ineffective. And those who put what they're doing, and I'm not saying become a moving target. Of course, if what you're doing may put you in harm's way, then you find a flag or a standard that doesn't look like it would put you in harm's way. Everything doesn't need to be made known. And that's why symbols are such a powerful medium to use for what it is that you want to do, because a symbol can say 500 million things. I remember when the rapper 50 Cent first came out, and he was telling everyone, yeah, my name it's a metaphor for change. And I was like, no, I know the real 50 Cent. He was a stick-up kid. That's where you got that name from. But obviously he knew that depending on the environment that he was in, if I'm back in Jamaica, Queens, everybody knows, okay, I named myself after famous Jamaica, Queens stick-up kid 50 Cent. And if I'm on the radio station or on MTV, it's a metaphor for change, So symbols are a very powerful tool, and that's why we plant those on our flags, because symbols mean so much, and they set that highest objective for us. So I want you all to think about that going forward. Maybe you need to make a family crest. Maybe you need to make a family flag. Certainly, I've already told you to make a family mission statement, so we're beyond that at this point. That should have been done already. That's what I mean when I say we're beyond that. But I would certainly say, look at the flag that you're working and operating under. For me, it's Anu. For my family, it's Anu. For those who are invested in this work, it's Anu. And there are principles and norms that go along with that, which I will be discussing soon. I'm moving us into a space more now where, for those who are really vibing from the teachings and really saying, okay, this is what works for me. This level of information, this perspective, this is working for me and my family. Creating more situations where people can be a part of this collective that we call Anu, and this can be their flag, not an organization. I speak about a lot. You guys know that I don't like organizations at all. I'm good with organizations. I like movements, but you can keep your organizations. I don't want to be a part of your organization. I don't have an organization. Okay. Organizations are made to be infiltrated. They're infiltration magnets. Okay. But being able to have that standard and that flag where we could say, this is who we are, this is what we do, is also very valuable when it becomes a more official thing, and you let the world know, okay, well, not only this is who we are, this is what we do, but this is how we feel about one another. So consider that before you think of disregarding our humanity and stripping us of our unalienable rights. Okay. So yeah, standard. Think about your standard, which you stand hard on, and be honest, because some of the things that you stand hard on and that you fight and rail against the most are the things that are most harmful to you. You know, the spiritual stuff, you'll take it in as long as it doesn't get in the way of what your banner and your flag wants for you. How many of you right now are celebrating Christmas Eve, but at the same time saying that, you know, that this was based off of Saturnalia? How many of you are sharing that information? That there's no way, even if there was that Messiah born around this, he wouldn't have been born around this time, even if that was the case. But this is based off of astronomical events. How many are sharing that kind of information? You know, and I'm not, again, condemning you if you want to put up a Christmas tree and do that whole thing. Everybody does their own thing. But what about your standards? Are you confusing those around you who would like to make a smarter and wiser choice into a better system and a better way of being? Are you confusing them by not making your standard clear to them? Are people in your existence or in your life experience who should not be there because you have not made your standard clear to them? Your flag is not planted high enough and standing hard enough and strong enough that the enemy knows that they are now in enemy territory when they come to you to try to infiltrate your camp, or they come to you to try to sway you to something else. Like I always say, you don't have to worry about doing protection spells all the time. If you're vibrating at the right frequency, those who have injurious intent towards you will feel uncomfortable in your presence, because they'll recognize I'm in enemy territory. I'm at an enemy camp, and something bad can happen to me. Let me get out of here. So that's how you get rid of parasites. You don't keep a dirty, dark environment. You shine your light and your flag and your banner strong and hard, and you purify all things around you, and then nothing else that doesn't work towards that banner, nothing else will feel comfortable in your presence. Now that's the personal inward thing too. When you're trying to get started, or you find that things are just not working for you, things are just not moving in a certain way, it's time to re-examine your standard. Is your standard big enough for what it is that you want to do? Is it time that you look at the next hill or the next mountain and say, maybe I need a new flag and I need to plant it a little higher, so that way it can oversee all of the things that I'm currently doing in my life now. My life has become bigger than this valley of a battlefield that I've been fighting for the past 10 years. I'm doing more now. I care about more now. I need a new standard now. Sometimes you outgrow your flag, believe it or not. Sometimes that's why the Anu symbol, you know, you see that Sankofa bird, and you know, I'm always going to be reaching back in order to move forward. And it just encompasses all of what it is that I knew was about on different levels. You know, the movement, the flight, the spirituality, the 14 feathers representing the 14 African principles. I'm going to do a breakdown on all of that soon. Don't worry about it. On the actual symbol, the logo for Anu. But anyway, that has been our Thunderground Thursday. I want to thank you all for listening and tuning in. Up until this point, I will be right back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern for Foundational Friday, and I urge you all to tune in. And then, of course, this Sunday for Chief Speaks. All right, so until such time, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this segment, please share it. Let your friends and family know what you're into and what you do. Stop hiding. And like I say, it's not really real until everybody calls you by your righteous name. All right. So until such time, everyone, be safe, travel wisely, and move wisely. All right. Peace and power.